Have you ever witnessed a time when life depended on a single choice, where every second felt like a battle between hope and despair? Imagine yourself caught in the middle of a storm, with freezing winds cutting into your skin like sharp blades. The ground beneath your feet slides with each step, and danger lurks in every movement. Now think about what that means for a bear cub, defenseless, fragile, and about to face the greatest challenge of his life. The snow falls mercilessly, covering the cliff in a treacherous layer of ice. High up on the mountain, a mother bear named Eyes watches attentively, while her puppy Mishka struggles to climb. She has already overcome this obstacle. His firm and experienced steps left marks in the snow, a safe path for his little one to follow. But Mishka doesn't have the same strength. Each attempt seems to take you further back. Each slip brings him closer to a cruel fate. The Siberian cold is relentless. The temperature drops to 40 degrees, and the wind howls like an invisible predator, threatening to drag the cub into the void. But he doesn't give up. Your eyes reflect fear, tiredness, but also determination. It needs reach your mother, because in the wild, weakness means death. But there is something more to that mountain. A strange sound vibrates in the air, one metallic buzz which does not belong to the wind, nor to the snow. Something is watching this scene from above, following the mother and calf's every move. And without them realizing, this intruder can change everything. Mishka tries once again. Its small claws scratch the slippery surface of the ice, searching for a firm spot. He propels himself forward, his paws shaking with the effort. He's so close. But then, a mistake. The ice breaks beneath its hind paw. The cubs slide. He struggles, tries to hold on, but the force of gravity is merciless. Mishka Kai. His body rolls down the mountain, disappearing into the white storm. Anya reacts with a desperate roar. She looks down, her instincts screaming. Your puppy is in danger. She needs to do something, now. But the real battle, it's still just beginning. Mishka disappears in the whirlwind of snow. The mother bear's heart races. She lets out a powerful roar, a mixture of fear and determination, and descends quickly, sliding down rocks covered in ice, ignoring the danger that could swallow them both at any moment. Nature does not forgive mistakes. Here, every decision could be the last. Now, imagine the feeling of being there, witnessing this scene up close. The desperation of a mother fighting against nature itself to save her baby. If you were in that moment, what would you do? Do you believe Mishka still has a chance? Write in the comments. Your opinion is important and helps us understand how you see this fight for survival. Mishka tries to stand up. The impact left him disoriented, his small paws shaking on the thin ice that threatened to break at any moment. He's hurt, exhausted, but the worst is yet to come. At the top, something moves in the sky, a sound that he doesn't know yet, but that instinctively scares him. The mother approaches, her breath visible in the frozen air, but Mishka hesitates. He feels that something is wrong. And it is at this moment that I ask you, have you ever felt that feeling of imminent danger when something seems wrong, but you don't know exactly what? That's what's about to happen here, and you won't want to miss the next few minutes of this story. Then, if you're rooting for Mishka and want to see how this fight will end, leave a like. This helps us continue to bring exciting stories like this, and more people will be able to learn about this incredible journey of survival. And if you're not already part of our community, subscribe to the channel now. Here, we tell real and impactful wildlife stories that show how strong and surprising nature can be. Join us and activate the bell so you don't miss the outcome of this story. Because now, the true danger is about to reveal its face. And it doesn't come from the piercing wind of eastern Siberia. It howls like an invisible predator, dragging with it gusts of snow that turn the landscape white and endless. The temperature drops to 40 degrees. The cold is brutal. Every breath Anya and Mishka take is like swallowing sharp ice knives. But they have no choice. They need to continue. They need to climb that cliff. Survival depends on it. Anya, the mother bear, steps forward with firm steps. His muscles are strong, his instincts sharp. She has faced winter before, She has crossed inhospitable territories to protect her cubs. But this time something is different. This time, they are cornered. Mishka, her cub, stumbles in the deep snow. Its little paws sink, struggling to move. He is tired, hungry, and confused, but he follows his mother because he knows that around her is where he is safest, or at least it should be. But how did they get into this desperate situation? What forced this mother and her calf to face such a dangerous challenge? The answer lies a few miles back, deep in the frozen forest. They had a home, a small valley where the river meandered between ancient trees and untouched snow. It was there that Anya taught Mishka to hunt, to play, to survive. But a danger found them before they could grow strong enough to face it. Humans have arrived, and with them, the metallic and threatening sound of the machines, the strange smell that did not belong to the forest, the traces of an unknown presence. Anya felt them first, through the wind, through the earth, through the shadows that moved where before there had been only silence. She knew what that meant. She had felt this before. She knew what humans could do. You Siberian brown bears, they were hunted for generations, persecuted for the profit of their skin, by greed and human expansion that devoured the icy land that once belonged only to them. Anya could not allow Mishka to face this fate. She needed to escape. So, under the darkness of the last night, they left. They walked for hours, running away from signs of invasion, following instincts that screamed to move away, to seek refuge away from strange presences. But refuge took them here. The valley is over. The forest disappeared. All that was left before them was this colossal cliff, a wall of ice and stone that stood like a silent monster before them. Back, the traces of humans were still present, invisible but real. They couldn't go back. They needed to go up. The wind blows hard, trying to pull Mishka off the ground. The little bear trembles, not just from the cold, but from the weight of fear that begins to settle in your fragile bones. Anya turns to him. Her eyes as dark as night meet the cub's, and he feels something other than fear, security. He trusts her. She goes up first. Its claws dig into the ice. Each step is firm, calculated. She has faced challenges before, but she cannot carry Mishka. He needs to learn, he needs to do it himself. The cub hesitates. Your instincts tell you to hunker down, to wait, to find shelter away from the biting snow. But there is no shelter. There is only one way. He takes a deep breath and moves forward. The snow slides under your paws. The treacherous ice threatens to swallow your steps. He clings to what he can, tries to follow his mother's tracks, but he's small. He still doesn't have Anya's strength. And then, the first error. The snow gives way, a piece of ice breaks off, and Mishka escarega. His claws fail, his body slides back a few meters before he can stop. He's further from the top now. The fear grows. Upstairs, Anya watches. She doesn't move, can't move it to it. She needs him to try. She needs him to fight. He tries again. Its small paws press the ice, its claws tear the surface seeking support. He climbs, inches at a time, the wind biting at his back, the snow trying to pull him back, but he refuses to fall. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Mishka will make it? Does he have the strength to overcome this impossible climb? Comment below. Your opinion is important, and this story becomes even more moving when we share this journey together. Mishka moves forward. Your body hurts. Your already tired muscles burn from the effort, but he sees his mother waiting for him at the top, and that's all he needs to keep going, until danger arrives. It's not the cold. It's not the snow. It is something invisible, but present. A strange sound cuts through the air. A low, rising hum, something that doesn't belong in the wild. Anya's eyes look up to the sky. Your instincts scream. She's heard it before. She knows what it means, threat. Mishka feels the vibration of the sound inside his chest. He stops. Your body freezes not because of the cold, but because of fear. And then, the fatal moment. The drone descends. Its robotic sound breaks the silence of the mountain. He doesn't attack. He doesn't touch. but his presence is enough to break something inside the little bear. Mishka gets scared. Your instincts collapse. You don't understand what it is, but your body reacts before your mind can process it. He makes a false step, and then he falls. A scream caught in your throat, a white world swirling around him. Time slows down. He feels the cold burning his skin as his body collapses, out of control. At the top, Anya's roar echoes through the mountain. Powerful, desperate, brutal. She sees her cub disappear in the snow avalanche. She sees the moment that could change everything, and she knows, with absolute certainty, which the time for waiting is over. Mishka felt the emptiness beneath his body as his world turned upside down. The cold ripped at his skin like invisible claws, the snow swirled around him in a chaotic dance, and for a moment everything seemed suspended in time. The cub didn't understand what was happening. He didn't know how. One moment he was climbing, and the next, he was being swallowed by the mountain. His little instincts screamed at him to grab onto something, anything, but his fragile hooks scraped against the frozen surface without finding purchase. He felt the fall pull him back, away from his mother's safety, toward an uncertain fate. At the top, Anya roared, the deep, despair-filled sound echoing across the frozen void. The wind swallowed her voice, but inside her, the call was clear. It was a cry of fear, of warning, of pure maternal instinct. Mishka was falling. Her cub, her only offspring, the only reason she still fought the cruel winter, was being dragged under its own weight, disappearing into the white darkness below. But he didn't fall completely. The cub hit a ledge on the slope and, in a stroke of luck or pure reflex, managed to dig its little claws into the ice. His body was shaking with adrenaline and the cold. His heart was beating wildly inside his chest. His breath was coming out in small sobs visible in the freezing air. He had stopped the fall, but for how long? Mishka felt his muscles burn with exertion. He was small, his bones still fragile, his strength limited. But giving up was not an option. He looked up and saw his mother at the top, silhouetted against the white sky, motionless, watching. He knew she wouldn't come to rescue him. This was a battle he would have to win alone. Above him, the wind hissed between the rocks, howling as if mocking his effort. He tried to pull his small body up, but the snow that covered the slippery surface did not allow for firmness. The treacherous ice was not an ally. It was a cruel and merciless enemy. Mishka tried again. His body was shaking. His muscles were at their limit. Every second hanging there was a blow to his resistance. But inside him there was something stronger than fear, something more powerful than tiredness, the need to survive. He pushed himself up, a short, shaky movement, but enough to tighten his grip. He scratched the surface, looking for a spot where he could gain a foothold. His eyes were wide, his breathing was heavy, and the wind was beating at his back as if daring him to continue. If he messed up one more time, there wouldn't be a second chance. Anya remained at the top, watching without moving. His instinct told him that any rash move could make the situation worse. If she went down to try to reach him, she could trigger an avalanche, or worse, she could scare him even more, and the cub could let go of the only support that was still keeping him alive. She trusted that he would find the strength to rise. Mishka stretched out once more, digging his little claws into the ice. His body swayed. He felt the emptiness beneath him, felt the fear freezing his veins, but he forced himself to continue. Fear couldn't overcome him. Each small advance felt like an eternity. Every second hanging between life and death was an internal battle. The snow slid beneath his hind leg. He lost some of his grip and his body fell backwards again. But this time, he didn't let go. He gritted his teeth, gathered all his energy, and with a desperate effort, managed to climb a little higher. Above, Anya growled softly, a sound barely perceptible in the storm. To anyone else, it would seem like just a noise lost in the wind. But for Mishka, it was everything. He listened. He felt it. It was proof that his mother was there, waiting for him. He couldn't disappoint her. With one last try, his body responded. One last push, one last effort, and finally his claws found a firm surface. He pulled his small body up, panting, feeling the burn of his muscles reaching their absolute limit. But he did it. His eyes met Anya's, who was watching him carefully. She showed no relief, he showed no emotion, because that was their world. Nobody celebrated survival, because surviving was the only option. And then, just when he thought his challenge was finally over, the buzzing returned. Mishka turned, his ears straining for the unfamiliar sound that cut through the sky like an invisible predator. The noise did not belong to the wind, nor to the mountain. It was something strange, something that wasn't part of the forest or the ice or the world he knew. And then, the cub felt something new. It wasn't the cold, it wasn't tiredness. Era fear. The sound grew, a metallic, threatening sound, something that vibrated in the air and made your skin crawl. He flinched, his instincts screaming at him to run away, but there was nowhere to go. And it was then that he realized that sound was following them. And whatever it wasn't there by chance. Mishka has just overcome the toughest challenge of her life, but a new danger is approaching. Do you think this sound poses a threat? What would you do in his place? Comment, "Stay strong, Mishka," whether you're rooting for him or danger, if you think something terrible is about to happen. Your comment is very important and helps this story reach more people. The piercing sound of the wind echoed through the canyon, making the snow dance in the air like little white ghosts. Mishka was still trying to control his breathing after the brutal effort of climbing that cliff. His little body was shaking, his muscles exhausted, but he was there, next to his mother, finally at the top. He did it. But something inside him told him he wasn't safe. The metallic hum he had heard moments before still seemed to vibrate against his skin, echoing inside his head. It was something unfamiliar, a sound that was not part of the forest, the ice, or the wind. And then, a new sound emerged, different but equally disturbing. One hoarse croak, an ominous call that spread across the gray sky. Mishka looked up, panting, and saw a black silhouette against the infinite white of snow and heavy clouds. Its wide wings beat slowly, as if time was slowing down just for that being. He spun in circles above them, like a silent sentry watching everything from above. A crow. Snow accumulated on Mishka's nose as he stared at the bird, not understanding why it made his skin crawl. He did not know that the ancient people of Siberia believed that crows were messengers of fate, harbingers of something terrible to come. He didn't know about the legends, the stories passed down from generation to generation, warning that where a crow flies overhead, death follows close behind. But Anya knew. Their dark eyes followed the slow, calculated movement of the bird above them. Her body tensed, her muscles rigid beneath the thick layer of fur and fat that protected her from the cold. She had seen this before. She knew the signs that nature gave, and he knew that ignoring them could be fatal. The crow descended a little lower, gliding with frightening precision. His black, empty gaze fixed on the mother bear for a moment, and then turned to Mishka, who was still breathing raggedly. Her paws dug into the snow, trying to find some sense of safety that, at that moment, seemed impossible. It was at that exact moment that the buzzing returned. This time, stronger, closer. Anya growled, turning sharply towards the horizon. Mishka took a step back, her heart racing as she tried to understand what was happening. The crow let out another caw, louder this time, and then took flight, disappearing into the white immensity of the storm that was forming in the distance. And then they saw it, a shadow moving across the sky. Mishka froze in place. It wasn't a bird. It wasn't something he recognized. The thing moved fast, cutting through the air with a sharp, unmistakable noise, the same metallic sound he had heard before. The cub instinctively ducked, huddling against the snow, seeking protection. But there was nowhere to hide. The top of the cliff was an open field. They were completely exposed. Anya growled louder this time, a clear warning, a threat to whatever was approaching. She placed herself in front of Mishka, blocking his view, her massive body forming a protective barrier. The sound continued to grow, vibrating in the air in a way that was impossible to ignore. It wasn't natural. The wind carried with it the weight of the impending storm. The snow fell more intensely, clinging to the fur of the mother and the cub. The cold was increasing, but now Mishka felt something stronger than the freezing temperature. He felt afraid. He remembered the raven, the way he observed them, the way he seemed to have predicted what was about to happen. The metallic noise became deafening. The black shadow crossed the sky above them at high speed. Mishka tried to follow its movement, but the thing was moving too fast. He could barely understand what he was seeing. And then it happened. The thing stopped in mid-air. She hovered exactly above them, without touching the ground, without moving forward or backward. It just floated in the void like a predator watching its prey. Mishka felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He wanted to run. But where? The cliff was behind them. One false step meant the end. Whatever was in the sky had trapped them. Anya moved forward a little, her snout raised, her body rigid. She didn't understand what this was, but she knew it wasn't natural. I knew it was dangerous. The high-pitched sound intensified. The shadow tilted a little, as if it was preparing to attack. Mishka took another step back. His lungs felt too small to contain the air he was trying to pull in with difficulty. He felt a tremor run through his legs, and for a moment he thought he was going to fall again. The wind howled around them. The storm raged across the horizon, but nothing was more threatening than that hovering in the sky. Anya growled one last time, her entire body ready to react. She wouldn't run away, she wouldn't back down. If she had to fight, she would fight. Mishka, on the other hand, couldn't move. His eyes fixed on the shadow, your ears ringing, his heart hammering against his chest. And then, the sound disappeared. The shadow leaned back, and in an almost imperceptible movement, it slid away, disappearing into the storm. The silence that followed was suffocating. Anya remained motionless for a moment, still alert. Had the danger passed, or did it just retreat to wait for the right moment to attack? Mishka finally allowed himself to breathe, but the feeling that they were being watched did not disappear. The storm was closer now. They needed to get out of there. They needed to continue, but something inside him said that that meeting had not been by chance. And now, I want to hear from you. What do you think that shadow in the sky was? Why did she appear at the moment when Mishka managed to climb? Was this just a coincidence or a foreshadowing of something even scarier? Comment, mystery, if you think there is still something hidden in this story, or omen, if you believe this was just the first sign of a much greater danger. Your comment makes all the difference. Mishka felt his entire body tremble. It wasn't just the cold, although it was so intense that his breath turned into small white clouds that disappeared into the sharp air. It wasn't just tiredness, though every muscle in her small body felt like it was on the verge of collapse. It was something deeper, a mixture of fear, desperation, and instinct, all fighting inside him at the same time. The snow accumulated in his fur made his movements even heavier. He tried to climb back up. His body trembled from the brutal effort. Its small claws tried to grip the slippery surface of the ice, but the cold had treacherously hardened the snow. Every step was a fight against gravity. Anya watched from the top, her gaze attentive, her motherly instincts screaming at her to reach down and grab her cub by the scruff of the neck, pulling him to safety. But she couldn't. If he went down, he would run the risk of dislodging the snow and causing them both to fall. She knew that the cub needed to learn to face the climb alone. This was how nature worked. Mishka dug in his claws once more, trying to ignore the howling wind that threatened to rip him off the slope. He felt the ice beneath his paws begin to crack, thin cracks forming with each movement. The wind was blowing furiously, kicking up the snow in blinding swirls, blocking his vision for precious seconds. One false step and he would slip again. This time there wouldn't be a piece of rock to stop him from falling. He gathered all his strength and advanced a little further. It was almost there. The top was close. He could feel the mother bear's presence, could hear her heavy breathing, her low, encouraging growl. Then came the gust of wind. She didn't just blow snow on him, it hit him like an invisible punch. Her small body lost its balance. For a terrifying instant, he felt emptiness behind him. His instincts reacted before he could think. He dug his claws into the snow and ice, desperately trying to hold on. But the wind was strong. He felt his hind legs leave the surface. Time seemed to slow down. Below him, the abyss called him. Mishka let out a muffled moan of fear. The wind roared around him, blowing his fur as if trying to rip him off the mountain. He needed strength. I needed one last push. But his body was weak. His heart was beating fast. His breathing was irregular. Anya growled. She saw the danger even before Mishka realized it. She knew that if the cub gave in a little more, there would be nothing that could stop his fall. Then she did something unexpected. With a sudden movement, she stepped forward, sending a shower of snow down. The sound of snow sliding and piling up echoed down the cliff. Mishka felt the impact of the new snow on his paws, and for a second, that was the push I needed. He grabbed a crack in the frozen rock and pulled himself up, breathing heavily, eyes wide with shock. He managed to hold on, but the battle was not over yet. His muscles screamed in pain. Fatigue threatened to overcome him at any moment. He didn't know if he had the strength left to make the last push. Anya lowered herself to the top of the mountain, her huge paw reaching toward him. She couldn't go down, but maybe he could go up a little more. Mishka looked at his mother, his eyes reflecting doubt but also hope. I didn't want to give up. He took a deep breath, gathering all the energy he had left in his small body. Then, with one last effort, he threw himself upwards. Its front paws found the firm ground at the top. He felt the heat of his mother's body, felt her presence, her smell. But the moment of relief lasted only a second, because then, the sound returned. The same metallic hum as before. This time, closest. Mishka, still panting, turned his head back. His eyes, once full of determination, were now wide with fear. The noise was unnatural. It didn't belong on the mountain. Above them, something moved in the sky. Anya stood still, his body rigid, his instincts razor-sharp. Mishka felt his heart race again. The danger had not yet passed. If before he fought against the snow and wind, now he would face a different enemy. An enemy that they couldn't see straight. An enemy that it shouldn't be there. Now I want to hear from you. Mishka has made it through the climb, but something even scarier is approaching. What do you think will happen now? Do you believe they are still in danger? Comment. Survival. If you think Mishka will overcome this challenge or threat, if you think something terrible is about to happen, your comment makes all the difference. The cold seemed to sink its sharp teeth into Mishka's skin. His lungs burned with every breath. His muscles were on the verge of collapse, and his mind screamed for him to stop, for him to give in to the exhaustion. But he knew he couldn't. Stopping meant giving up, and giving up meant not surviving. The cub tried to get his paws on the snow once more, but the treacherous ice beneath him gave no respite. His muscles trembled, his strength diminished by the second. And then, your body gave in. He slipped. This time it wasn't a sudden drop like before. It was slow, cruel, as if the mountain was pulling him down, testing his limits, seeing how much he could resist. Her little body glided, his claws scratched the frozen surface, searching for something, anything that could hold him. But there was nothing. Panic took over him. If he slipped any more, it would be the end. Above, Anya let out a low growl, an urgent call, a sound full of command and protection at the same time. She was there. She wouldn't leave him alone. Mishka wanted to answer, wanted to say that he was trying, but fear suffocated him. His wide eyes moved frantically, searching for a way out, some solution. And then, he saw it. Directly in front of him, a dark mark stood out against the pristine white of the snow. A footprint, his mother's footprint. Big, firm, safe. Proof that she had been exactly in that place, that she had managed to go that way, and that he could too. Mishka blinked, his quickened breaths turning into small warm clouds against the ice. That was it. I wasn't alone. His mother had taken that route before, and if she could do it, so could he. He felt a new energy course through his body, a spark of hope. Mishka took a deep breath and this time adjusted his posture. He learned from his mistakes. Instead of just desperately lunging forward as he had done before, he observed the snow around him, felt the texture of the ice, realized where he could place his paws. With calculated movements, he pushed himself upwards. His muscles screamed with exhaustion, but he didn't stop. The mother's footprint was there, serving as a guide. Every step he took, every inch gained, was a small triumph against the cold, against fear, against the mountain itself. The snow continued to fall, covering the trail his mother had left behind, but he already knew what to do. Now, he understood the path. He steadied himself more. It no longer slipped like before. He knew where to step, he knew how to distribute his weight so as not to give in to the ice. He was learning. And then, with one last push, Mishka stood up. The top of the cliff was just inches away. He stretched out his little paws, pushing his body to the limit. The mountain resisted, but he resisted more. His claws finally touched solid ground, and in one last movement he threw himself upwards. The world seemed to go silent for a second. He blinked, panting, confused. It was at the top. He had achieved. Mishka felt Anya's presence next to him before he even saw her. The mother bear remained motionless, watching him. She showed no relief, no emotion. She just stared at him with those deep, enigmatic eyes. Why, this was their world. There was no celebration. There was no rest. There was only survival. Mishka was still shaking. His body was on edge, but he was there, steady. He looked at his mother and then realized something. The lesson she wanted to teach him wasn't just about climbing a cliff. It was about trusting yourself, on knowing that the strength to survive was within him even when everything seemed lost. And he understood. But the moment was short-lived, because then the sound returned. This time, it wasn't just a buzzing sound in the distance. This time it was taller, closer. Mishka turned his head slowly, his body still trying to understand what was happening. His heart, which had previously been beating faster due to exertion, was now beating faster, by fear. The metallic sound reverberated in the air, a strange, artificial noise that I didn't belong there. And then he saw it. In the sky, something moved. Something that wasn't a bird. Something that shouldn't be there. Mishka froze. His entire body tensed. Whatever that thing was, she was looking for them. Mishka found strength where he least expected it and managed to overcome the challenge. But now, a new danger arises before him. Do you think this threat could be even worse than the cold itself? Comment determination if you think Mishka can face what's coming, or danger if you think something scary is about to happen. Your comment is essential to this story. The silence of the mountain was broken by a sound that didn't belong there. A metallic, artificial cold hum, as if the sky itself were vibrating. Mishka felt a shiver run through his skin, his instincts screaming that something was wrong. He looked up, eyes wide, heart hammering in his chest. And then he saw it. A shadow moved across the sky. It wasn't a bird. It wasn't an eagle. It wasn't a crow. It was something that didn't flap wings, something that glided through the air in a strange, unnatural way. The sound got louder, closer. Anya felt it first, his body tense, muscles rigid as stone. She raised her head slowly, her black eyes focused on that strange object that hovered above them. Was it a predator? She didn't know what it was, but she knew what she felt. And what I felt was threat. Mishka felt her mother's gaze change. He noticed the way her fur stood on end, how her breathing became heavy, how her posture tilted slightly forward. It was the same kind of alert she showed when she noticed a wolf lurking. The puppy couldn't take his eyes off it. The irritating sound pierced his mind, a constant noise that made his head throb. The buzzing increased, the object descended a little more, and then Anya growled. It was a low sound, but filled with fury. A warning. One last warning for the threat to move away. But the drone did not retreat. On the contrary, he moved even closer. Mishka didn't understand what it was. It wasn't an animal, it wasn't a storm. It wasn't anything that his instinct knew how to recognize. And that was exactly what terrified him. It was an invisible danger. He felt his legs get weak, his body was tense, as if his own skin was trying to escape. Anya was now in a full defense stance. His body hunched over, claws exposed, eyes fixed on the threat above them. She wouldn't run away. If necessary, she would fight. Mas Mishka, the cub, I couldn't bear that sound. It was as if every beat of that hum vibrated inside his chest, as if he was surrounded by something I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there. And then he gave in. His instincts took over him completely. Mishka took an involuntary step back, trying to get away from it, trying to escape the sound, the threat, the fear. But he forgot where he was. He forgot how close to the abyss he still was. And in a fatal second, his feet missed the ground. The treacherous ice slid beneath his paws, his grip lost its grip, his body was pulled by gravity. And then, he fell. Time slowed down. The world revolved around him. The feeling of emptiness took over his body. The cold wind bit his skin as he plummeted. It was as if the mountain itself was rejecting him. Above him, Anya's roar exploded into the air, a sound of pure despair. The type of sound that echoed for miles, filled with fury, fear, and impotence. But she couldn't do anything. She could only watch her cub disappear into the snow and rocks below. Mishka tried to hold on to something, anything, but it was too late. His body spun in the air, snow swirling around him like a personal storm. His eyes widened, his heart raced. And then, the impact. He crashed against the mountainside. He felt a sharp pain go through his body. The surrounding snow rose in a white cloud, muffling his vision. More to stay not finished. He kept sliding, going down more and more. Every meter he descended took him further away, more from the top. More of your mother. More of the only protection he knew. And then, silence. When the snow finally settled, Mishka was motionless. His small body half buried in the ice. His eyes open, fixed on some point in the cloudy sky. The buzzing was still there, but now it seemed more distant. Or maybe it was he who was distant. I didn't know if I could move. I didn't know what had happened. All I knew was that the pain was everywhere. Over it, the mother bear roared non-stop. She was in a panic. She had never felt scared like this. She knew she needed to get to him. But the way it wasn't simple. The place where Mishka had fallen was much steeper, most dangerous. And now, he was further from the top than before. Mishka was so close to winning this challenge, but something unexpected happened. Do you think he can still recover? Or was this fall the end? Comment strength if you believe he will be able to get up, or fear if you think something even worse could happen. Your comment is essential for this story to continue. Mishka remained motionless in the snow. Her small body was shaking, not just from the intense cold, but from the pain and fear that still coursed through her bones. Every breath was heavy. Every muscle felt like it wanted to give up. The fall had hurt him, but more than that, it had stripped him of the confidence he had just gained. He had fought so hard to get to the top, and now he was further away than ever. Above, his mother couldn't stop roaring. It was a wild call filled with desperation and frustration. She knew she needed to reach him, but the path was dangerous. If she descended too quickly, she could trigger an avalanche. If he waited too long, the cold might overcome him before she could save him. Every second was a choice between risk and survival. But Mishka couldn't think about it. He felt the cold snow beneath his body, felt the burn in his muscles, felt the tiredness clouding his mind. He wanted to rest just a little, just enough for the pain to go away. And then, like a whisper carried by the wind, the buzzing returned. This time, he wasn't just in the air. He was inside it. That metallic sound, which had ripped through the sky and invaded his mind, now it seemed even stronger. Mishka slowly turned his head, his body heavy as if covered in tons of snow. And then, he saw it. The drone was still there, hovering in the air, like a predator that had no eyes but saw everything. It was different from the wolves he had learned to fear, unlike the eagles that flew over the forest, waiting for a careless chick. Because wolves and eagles belonged to that world, but not that. The cub felt something inside him twitch. It wasn't just fear, it was something deeper, something he couldn't explain, but it made him feel like he should never have been seen for that. Human interference in that story was not an accident. She was the trigger that turned Mishka's journey into a fight against the unknown. How many other animals have gone through this? How many have felt their survival threatened not by natural predators, but by something that came from a world they don't understand? In nature, each animal has its own fears. The deer fears the wolf. The fish fears the bird that dives at speed to grab it. But who teaches a bear to fear a flying machine? The problem is that Mishka didn't know what that was, and what an animal does not understand, it fears. Drones were created to capture incredible images, to allow humans to explore the world without touching it. But then, why now, here, did this little puppy feel that that object was as present as the cold that punished him? Mishka didn't know that on the other side of that machine was a human, someone who was perhaps amazed by the images he saw, someone who I had no idea the impact I was having. Human interference, I had already changed the course of this story. But how many other stories have been changed without anyone noticing? The use of drones to study and film wildlife has grown significantly in recent years. But researchers warn that this technology, if used incorrectly, can be more dangerous than beneficial. Studies have already shown that the simple sound of a drone can increase the heart rate of wild animals, even those that do not show external signs of stress. And what happens to an animal that is constantly on alert? He becomes more vulnerable, more likely to make impulsive decisions, more susceptible to getting hurt. And that's exactly what happened to Mishka. It wouldn't have crashed if the drone hadn't been there. He wouldn't have hesitated if that buzzing hadn't invaded his instincts, confusing his mind. Now, he was injured, lost, further from the top than before. And all this because someone, somewhere wanted to capture a perfect image. But what is the cost of this perfection? Mishka was still lying in the snow. His eyes began to close. Upstairs, Anya was still roaring, but now their roars seemed more and more distant. Mishka was tired, so tired. And then, he listened. It wasn't the drone. It wasn't the wind. It was something deeper, something he recognized, something that it was not a sound, but a memory. The footprint he saw before, the mark in the snow that showed him that his mother had already gone that way, and that he could go there too. If he managed to climb earlier, why couldn't I do it now? He could still feel his heart beating. He could still feel the cold snow beneath his body. He could still hear his mother's voice roaring in the distance. So, he was still alive. And if he was still alive, he could still fight. He took a deep breath. Snow filled his nostrils. He tried to move a paw. His muscles protested, but he managed. So he tried the other one. Mishka felt something awaken inside him. It was different from fear, different from pain. It was something stronger. The decision not to give up. Because if human interference had brought him down, it was he who would decide if this meant the end. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you think about this situation? Do you believe drones should be used to film wildlife? Or do you think this technology could do more harm than good? Comment care if you think we should be more responsible with the use of this technology, or balance if you believe there is a right way to use it without harming animals. Your comment is essential for this story to continue. If you've made it this far, it's because this story has gripped you from beginning to end. And I guarantee you, we have many other incredible stories to tell you. Stories of courage, of overcoming, of survival on the edge. And some of them are even more impressive than this. Then, don't waste time. Subscribe to the channel now to follow each new exciting journey of the Wild Kingdom. Activate the bell to be the first to see the next video, because believe me, you won't want to miss what's coming. And if this story touched you, leave your like right now. This helps a lot to continue bringing content like this. Now, I want to hear from you. Comment Mishka Warrior to show that you rooted for him until the end. Your comment makes all the difference and helps me understand how involved you are in these stories. And speaking of emotion, the next video is already appearing on your screen. In it, you will discover another true story that will give you goosebumps. Click now and come see what happened. I guarantee you it's even more surprising than you imagine.